and you'll get to see, do they look the same? Traditional, double fire, and raw fire. And I'm going to do that in 2 different colors. So here's what we have going on. I have 6 bottles, and we're going to do a test to see what happens when you raw fire your glaze. And so these 2 bottles are not yet fired at all, they're completely raw. And we're going to do, these are actually, even though they look the same, 2 different, where we have a floating blue and a seafoam, the 2 glazes I do a lot of tests with. But put them on and raw fired them through a bisque fire, and obviously they didn't complete, but I did not expect them to look exactly the same. In fact, what I did expect them to do though was craze. This floating blue has crazed in the past when I've done this, and it didn't craze, so I don't know why. I wish I had 1 more set. In fact, I'm gonna throw 2 more bottles now and bisque those with like a 3 dip or a really thick dip and just do a test. This is just a single quick dip, but maybe if I put it on real thick we can get it to craze, and I'll have a 4th sample. Okay, I have 12 ounces of clay. Let's get these thrown up. So here's the 2 bottles, seafoam, floating blue. And the goal is to get a really thick coat on this one, and we'll put these in a bisque and then bring them up to a glaze fire. But I'm gonna wait and we'll dunk them at least 1 more time. So here's what they look like before tonight's bisque. Okay, so came out of the bisque this morning, seafoam and floating blue. And already I can see this looks way different than the single dip. Unfortunately, the floating blue did craze. So right away, that's not going to heal itself, I'm quite certain, when we fully fire this. And the seafoam, also a little bit flaky around the edge. So you're definitely going to see evidence that is not going to heal itself. But so now I'm gonna glaze these 2 raw, glaze these 2 traditional, and then we'll fire the whole bit in a cone 5 glaze tonight, and we'll see what they look like. Well, here they are out of the kiln. We have the regular firing on this side, we have the raw firing on this side, and then both of these were our double fires, one thinner and one triple dipped. And well, one thing that really blew me away was, take a look at this, raw fire, traditional fire. If anything, there's maybe a little more color. It's hard to say just dip to dip, but I think this is actually more interesting, and no bisque required. I think that's crazy, and wasn't necessarily bone dry. I only waited, oh, it's warm now, but maybe a day and a half from throwing it to dipping it. I mean, it was pretty quick. And you can see just the difference in what a thicker coat does. But, so one thing I learned, at least the seafoam, double firing makes it look interesting, and raw firing it actually makes it look slightly more interesting. I had honestly thought that what would happen in a raw fire was I'd have some sort of blistering or something because it's burning out all the organics, and but it just didn't happen. So you can see, I don't know how much of the color difference in these that I can attribute to its firing, simply because this is this floating blue is just so sensitive to thickness. You know, this is really what it looks like in my mind when it's thin. And so both of these, this color clearly did not come just from double firing it through bisque and glaze, but when you put it on thicker, it turns right back into its blue. And I incorrectly said that this was crawling, or crazing rather. I would consider this to be almost crawling, where it kind of retracts, leaves these bare spots. But crazing, we didn't get the crazing. So I wanted to show you what it was that I wanted to see. Now honestly, I wasn't even sure I was going to show you this. This is a tile. Oh, it was 4 tile grouping. I was doing this thing. It turned out pretty awful, but it required a double firing where I was doing shellac resist with different colors. All of this right here is floating blue that I put on raw unfired clay, and I ran it through the bisque, and then when it came out I poured a clear glaze over it, and it filled all the little crazing spots. And when it then was glaze fired, it's fully healed, right? But I still get these, there you can see it, those crackles, and I thought, man, that is cool. I want to do that on purpose. So I do these two, single dip. I thought, well, this is the one I cared about, the floating blue. It worked before. I did this one just because. And it didn't look like it crazed. You remember these both looked kind of dull and very similar to each other, but I didn't see any evidence of crazing. So I went back and I made these and tried to put it on thicker, thinking, well, I want to see the darn crazing, especially on this one because I've seen it before. Well, it may be the case that I actually did have crazing and I just couldn't see it, because when I made these two and it came out of the bisque and it wasn't crazed, they were both the dull color. I had also done this mug. I have an upcoming video where I'm going to be welding stainless steel handles onto these, and it's interesting. I can't fully account for why there's these changes in the color, but I think it was because of how I might have done the inside first and did a little sponging right here, and then when I put the clear over, maybe capillary action of my sponging had already filled in the crazing, and I didn't even know it was crazing. But you can see here, hopefully you can see, it's got this really interesting pattern. And this, by the way, this is wax resist that I had put in the holes, and it wasn't dry inside, and when I dipped the white on it, literally ran down the side. So it's kind of a bummer, but so I could have actually had it. I actually should have taken these, and while they were after their first firing out of the bisque, even though they didn't look crazed, I should have put a little clear on them, because it might have revealed something there. Now, whether or not I could achieve that level of crazing again, I don't know. Well, hopefully you found that interesting. Let me know if you've ever raw fired or double fired your own glazes, and let me know if you've ever had a project fail, but you spotted something that you wanted to try. Thanks again.